Hey everyone, this is Mohammed Abal Saud, aka Creek Messer, coming to you from sunny Saudi Arabia, even though it's night right now. And I'm here to test out both my new webcam and microphone. And to do that, I've decided to answer one question sent to me by Solstice. He was kind enough to DM me the message. I'm looking at you, Gosling Ray. I'm looking at you too. You know what you did. You know what you did. And yeah, it was a good question. It was basically forgive the shakiness of it all. It was basically I want to know what your initial concept was for Krieg and how he's evolved over time. And I'm not gonna try to make this video too long for testing purposes. So to answer, my basic concept for Krieg was something I had since like I was just turning into like a teenager, like I was like I just discovered the internet. I just discovered something called forum roleplay. I just discovered something called anime, all that jazz. And one of the things I liked the most, which was the basis for this concept, was this tough guy who can take out other people unarmed, who could take blows and whatnot. Uh, like he was like your basic martial artist without being taught martial arts. He was your brawler. He was your brawler. And I've RP'd this concept on different sites before, in some shape or form. And when I came to base, I decided to start on that, to start using that concept as a basis. My intent for Creek when I chose Sunbirth would be your typical brawler, your typical guy who, against all odds, has a heart of gold in a city that tries very hard to crush it. Like he's adapted well to the city. He's adapted well to the city with his morals intact. So what's that done? When so what was that done as that very basis? What I intended was to have Craig be involved in the gang politics. Like even at that time, our choices were and still are Dagger Hands, Sun's Birth, and Night Eyes. Now Craig basically still having his morals. I want and the Sun's Birth or being the more moral of the gangs. Not really moral, I'd say, but a lot less brutal than Daggerhand and more straightforward than the Night Eyes, I'd say, in terms of tactics. Drake is a brawler, he's not a sneaky guy. So I wanted him to be part of that gang. But alternative, he ended up part of a different gang called the a player made gang, started by a guy called Kate, called the Crimson Edge. But that gang formation fell through. There was some drama. The player got banned, along with a couple of other guys, I believe, or either they got banned or they left, deciding not to stick around. And that caused him to be gangless again. But during that brief period as part of the gang, he made a mistake, like something that went against his morals. He was just doing his job as a gangster, as part of the gang at the time. But during that, he made a mistake that went against his morals, and he felt haunted by it. Now, at that point, I was thinking of making him join the Sun's Birth again, lead him probably to a darker path, uh, like be apathetic to Sunbird's plight like he used to be. But then he ran into a Celeran Knight in the form of a player named Imas. He, and through a good old brawl, he kind of befriended the guy, who gave him a way in, so to speak, as the Celeran Knights were there for a reason. They had something to do in Sunbirth that would have led them to Sahova. Yeah. So Krieg had an end with the Knights, but I wasn't sure. Like they were definitely a possibility. They were definitely a branch. Like he could either go A or B. And then I went into another combat thread. I believe with a fellow named Erdanis, if I'm remembering my names correctly. And in that thread, both he and Krieg ran into like minor gangs, and then ultimately clashed against the Dagger Hands, and who were close to Sun's Birth territory. So they had the Dagger Hands on one side and the Sun's Birth at the other. Now Krieg didn't like the Dagger Hands. They're assholes. But during his fight he got wounded. And the Sunbirth were trying to press gang him while he was wounded to fight against the Dagger Hand. Krieg didn't like that, being forced to fight while he was wounded and barely had the energy to fight, was just asking him to be cannon fodder. Like, so he said fuck you to both of them. And well, he ultimately survived his fight, I think. Like, he didn't fight against the Dagger Hands or Sun's Birth, but he was able to get away with the help of Eridanis. Then he joined the Knights, thanks to Sir Imas, with that and he got from him. So, under Knight protection, he went with them to Sahova, where he spent most of the season being healed up and being shipbound. And considering Krieg's faith was to Dira, it wouldn't have been a good idea for him to even set foot on Sahova anyway. Because, in a way, I think he'd be very insulted at the idea of Newits, these undead beings that defy the natural order of things, so to speak. From there, ultimately, they returned from Sahova, they returned to Sunbirth, and from Sunbirth, Krieg traveled with a Slattern knight named Sarah Natasha, which was the patron NPC that I made, and whose stats I had to work later on to a more acceptable level. But she was one of the people who played a pivotal role in his faith and in his morals. And during their journey, they ran into Fallon Skylar, another player character that I'm sure some of you very well know, uh, who joined them on their journey to Solaris. And during that journey, Krieg got a huge respect for Fallon. Although I think at some point he discovered she was a witch, and like a good Sunburthian, Krieg disliked magic, but Fallon was his friend, so he wasn't sure what to do with that information. Uh, but ultimately he was able to get over it. And there he spent a good few years in Solaris, and there he met a lot of people coming. They came, they went. A lot of stuff happened, good, bad, and a lot of them shaped who he was from then. Like already he was when I made him, he was deviating from his path. Like I wanted him to have morals, but didn't necessarily want them to be like a knight in shining armor kind of deal. But then he already decided, nope, I'm going over there. And then when he came to Solaris, East met West, had a baby, and came more stronger morals for Krieg. Like one of them being that helping people, that it's reinforced something that was already there that Krieg wanted to do. Uh, his faith in Yahal, that's something he found during his squirehood. He also saw how different Solaris was from Sunworth, like how vastly different it was. Like, sure, they were living in a military dictatorship under a military dictatorship, but it was a benevolent dictatorship. For like, ultimately, the knights wanted to help people from his point of view, but he didn't like how their orders seemed to chafe at people. Like there was something there that chafed at Krieg, who had valued the lack of order for so long. And then he went to Kinash, uh, a city that pretty much thrived on slavery. It was the basis of its economy. What started the city itself, I believe. And while it went against Krieg's very sensibilities, he could he found himself enjoying the city. He found something there that he could compare to Sunbirth. Like Sunbirth had all its problems, had its gangs, it had its whatnot, and he found that similarity in the dynasty as well. He compared them to the gangs. He saw them similar to the gangs, but instead of to his knowledge, instead of having like skirmishes on the street of the city, the Kinash dynasty is try to what's the word, subvert each other in other ways, not pleasant ways, but not as violent as Sunbirth. And of course, they had their own problems in the form of the Rujaro, who are slaves they mistreated. I'll be right back in a second. So yeah, I'm back. So yeah, they had their problems in the form of the Rujaro, the mistreated slaves. And Krieg was very sympathetic to the slaves, very much so actually. Like he wouldn't mind fighting with them. Uh, but yeah, he saw the downside of that. And I think in both Solaris and Sun and Kinash, Krieg wondered, is this the kind of direction that Sunworth could have gone? Like in Solaris, if they had like if one of the gangs or one form of government or somebody managed to unify Sunworth long enough to affect such change. Whereas in Kinash, if somehow the gangs could like band together to form something of a ruling body for the city, like I wouldn't call it a government, but more like an organization that made sure the city's welfare was tended to. even if they had no direct control over the citizens itself, or somewhat. I don't know how to phrase it. Uh, and then fast forward a few years, like at some point when Krieg came back to Solaris, he decided, I can't. I'm not sure if I'm ready to become a knight yet. At that point, he actually didn't have all his knightly skills. I still have to do riding for one thing, and to up my shield skills, which will take quite a while. But yeah, that's if I intend to make him a knight. Yeah, you see these eyebrows. Uh, I'm just wasting time right now. And he decided, I think I want to see more of the world. And that sort of came his excuse to leave the knighthood. He could always come back again, but right now he just really wanted to see more of the world before he committed, if he would commit. Of course, then at that point, I think I dropped out of Niz for a while. Uh, Plenty of the city is closed down due to lack of players or lack of a storytellers. And like even back then, I mean, one city was hard to manage for the storytellers. I mean, it didn't matter if you were assistant storyteller, domain storyteller, regional storyteller. Like one city is still very stressful to manage. Like founders and regional storytellers are basically overseers. They run their they run their one city or two cities, but they are reliant on the DSs to keep things also going smooth. They cannot be everywhere. I mean, when you have even 5 to 10 players in one city, that can be very hard to manage. And of course, these stations are volunteer. This is people's own time. I mean, they're not paid to do it. Otherwise, it would be a job. And from that point, I think I was kind of like back on and on until recently this year. I returned Krieg, came back to Sunbirth, and at this point, he was still kind of lost. He didn't know what to do with himself. He had these strong models. He's seeing these problems in Sunbirth. He's seeing it as stagnating, uh, some sort of chaotic stagnation. Like whatever happens, things just seem to get worse, and it feels to him like somebody is making it worse intentionally. Like they want to keep it that way. I don't know, could be right. Well, I don't know. I mean, he's the god of chaos and evil, so maybe him. But yeah, but yeah. So his first season was trying to acclimate back to the city. He got a job at Toll Johnny's as a pit fighter. I mean, even back then, he was pretty good at fighting. I think I started him as competent brawling. Yeah. And during that first season in spring, he interacted with Kelski. He interacted. Yeah, I think mostly it was Kelski in a meaningful way. And that sort of stoked his sense for justice. And then came the Gnosis quest for Enervanism and for Yishol's Gnosis as well. That became a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I expected the god to show up, but I wasn't expecting Yishol of all people. I was just hoping for the one Gnosis, like any other sword that's important to me at the time, even though plot wise they would have been amazing. uh So what happened during his thread with Kelsey and that quest kind of lit his sense of purpose. Like it doesn't really have a focus right now. All he knows is that there are bad people coming to the city, and that he wants to try his best to influence the city towards a better direction. Not for himself, but for people like Kelsey, for people like Irwin, for people like Bronwyn, even though I haven't met Bronwyn yet, for people like Renee, even people like Kinyer, if he thought Kinyer wanted the city to be a better place. Like, but yeah, that's where his goals were leading him. Like, he wants to help. Most important, like the people in Tent City. So right now, I think Krieg is sort of this violent guy. Like, only violence in fights because he finds fighting awesome no matter what. Even though he's worried about getting lost in his bloodlust towards a negative direction again. Uh, he ultimately became this sort of shining knight in a knight in shining armor without the shining armor, and who likes to pummel people's faces in as a hobby. And he wouldn't mind dying so long as it's for the city's benefit. If it means Sunbirth becomes a positive place, like Solaris, like Celeste, like he doesn't want it orderly, but he wants it to be like someday to be as prosperous as Solaris or as prosperous as Ganache, but still in a good direction. He wants it to be still Sunbirth. So yeah, hmm. So yeah, I think that about covers it. Like this video is running long already. Even I wanted to keep it short for test purposes, but yeah, talking about this foregone conclusions was probably going to be a long shot, and I tend to babble like I'm doing right now. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Solstice. This is Muhammad Abu Al Saud, aka Krieg Messer, signing off.